there needs to be more financial capacity in the system. Another avenue to that 3-year process, which I would recommend both. But to me, the legislature, the system, the public would be also encouraged if you get to a point where the system itself, the CASs, the principals, the teachers, are asking for it. And they're willing to pay for it with a piece of their wage to reform them. So what we're asking for is not an increase in the position for you. What we're asking for is to give more money to the classroom. And the classroom decides that they need that position. That's the ideal world. That's when the line is asking for staff support. And we're using line money. So we're not building a bureaucracy. We're giving more money to the classroom. But the classroom is smart enough to know that they need that support in the system. That to me is the ideal world of raising money.
Okay, thank you very much. We're moving on to our next discussion item, which is the report from the Hawaii State Teachers Association, HSTA, and the Department of Education Joint Committee on the Educator Effectiveness System. And we would ask that we have Joanne Lewis from Tupele High. Joan Lewis. Tupele High. Diane Mokuao from Molokai High. Welcome. And Stacy Kulihisa from Noelani Elementary School. As well as Tammy Chun from the Office of Strategy, Innovation, and Performance. So, we're going to start with Joan. Or someone start with Tammy.
You called everyone up. Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to introduce them down the road so that everyone can associate the name of the person.
They're waving.
Okay, they're all waving. Everybody's going.
Yeah, they're all waving. We have only an hour and a half before our 5 o'clock meeting, so, but take your time.
Okay, we're getting the presentation.
Okay, so we'll move on.
Are you going to move again?
Oh, yeah, please.
But it's going to be right.
So we're here today to report on a 3-year process that we have all participated on in various combinations, representing a larger group who was not able to be here today, which is referred to as the Joint Committee. So the Joint Committee was created out of the collective bargaining agreement in 2013. An agreement is from 2013 until 2017 to establish the Joint Committee with regard to the teacher evaluation. So as you recall, the collective bargaining agreement included language where the teachers voted through their ratification to agree with the department on some aspects of teacher evaluation. And in that process of doing that, we created the Joint Committee, and Diane was part of the original group that helped craft the MOU out of which the Joint Committee was created. The committee
She had
was
black hair back then.
So as you can see from the slide, which is just a direct excerpt from the MOU and the collective bargaining agreement, the committee's role is to review the design, validity, and reliability of the performance evaluation system for continuous improvement of the design and implementation, and to provide recommendations for adjustment or changes to the superintendent and the Board of Education to improve the design and the implementation. So this group has been meeting, but this is the first time we're doing an official report to the Board of Education in terms of an oral report. The organization of this group is that there are 4 members each from HSTA and the DOE. There's a mutually agreed upon facilitator. The group meets at least twice a year. We typically meet 3 or 4 times a year. At the end of each session, we report on the outcomes of that session to the superintendent, and often the executive director or the president of HSTA will also attend on the report out. And then after that, a written set of recommendations are transmitted via memo to the superintendent, and copies are given to the HSTA executive director and the board chair. And then on the in the box on this slide, you'll see a list of the current members of the Joint Committee, and it includes teachers, a principal, a complex area superintendent, and other representatives from both HSTA and DOE. Those leads at this time are Steve Schatz, Deputy Superintendent, and Terry Holt, who is a resource teacher with non-equity INI and representing HSTA.
So this group is, never happened before. We have DOE and HSTA and teachers. So we had to establish a new working situation. We had to come in and know that we all had our own agendas, but we had to come in and really be able to think about the other person's perspective and work through solutions like that. So it was a really trust-building kind of a situation. We had to build it slowly and really make sure that we were looking at things with data, with feedback from teachers, principals. You know, we had to look at the whole picture. And it was just a collaborative situation that we built up to where we have this trust and we can address the hard issues. So what we have done is we had a joint survey put out by teachers, by HSTA and DOE, and that was in spring of 2014 and 15. We have made some changes. The first year it was everybody doing everything, and it was an overburden to the system of everybody. So the next year it was based on ratings, highly effective and effective. We're able to streamline, and the intent is that we always wanted to focus on supporting the new teachers and then the teachers needing the help. And there was and always using the data that we were getting. We were DOE had a data person who would bring in and could see which complex was having the best success, or where the ratings were higher, you know, where were the ratings lower. So we would always be able to look deeper than what was first presented to us.
So to be really candid, what we thought about when we negotiated it and we began, we thought was a pretty straightforward process, and we thought we had all of our ducks in a row. And effectively what we ended up doing was kicking over rocks that have not been moved forever. And you know that once you do that, there's like a whole lot of bugs that are underneath those rocks. And that's really what this process has been about, and it is why it is so challenging, because while this group, the Joint Committee, had been very upfront, very candid, but also trying to be very understanding that any one individual's view of the education world and the public education system of Hawaii was in fact just that one person's view. Trying to craft something that took in what everybody's needs were was a whole lot more complicated, and as inclusive as we thought we were, with as many surveys as we've tried to do, I am fairly confident you've met with a number of individuals who have come to you personally and said, "You didn't listen to me, and this isn't what I wanted," and make it go away. So what we intended to do in the first year, and this is from the teacher's perspective, we wanted to ensure that we could have our place at a table that would allow us to be the equals we have always known that we were. But that has not historically been a pathway for us to have these types of engaging discussions. Knowing that we know that we were treading into an area that generally is not an employee's area, it is the employer's area, and we've stumbled a couple of places because of that. We started with something that was immense, a system that we knew, even as we were discussing it, was much larger than your concern that we only have a half of a world language, half of a art thing. that is an important concern. And it was into this very streamlined system that we were bringing in something that was quite demanding of everybody. And so we tried it in its full glory year one. And I likened it to like the most intense IRS audit anybody could have. We were all audited. And it comes to find out, we are not stealing money. You know, we're doing good. That was after year one. And so after year one, some of our accomplishments include listening to the feedback that said, yes, we want to hear what our students have to say, but no, our students' input into our evaluation should not be a static number. It should at best be an item that we can look at to reflect for ourselves what it is that we think we're doing and how is it coming out to our students. And so moving the student evaluation into reflection piece for core professionalism, that was done in year one. We realized that we needed to change up what everybody needed to be doing because not everybody needed to be doing the full audit. But in fact, there are some that need the help. And that was something that we continue to pursue. Interestingly, with many different parties, including those beyond the Joint Committee, wanting to have a say or needing to have a say in this, there were some changes that were made, particularly to the student learner outcome formula that in year two made SLOs a happy thing in year one, a very unhappy thing in year two. And we take that in stride and we keep moving on. Everything that we've done has been to try to take back all the feedback, including the fact that trying to do this for every teacher twice a year is not sustainable at any rate. So what do we do to scale it back and still be authentic to a process that is equal and equitable and all the things we would like in the world? Every year has been a different discussion about that. And so the streamlined year that we are currently in, that was provided for all highly effective and effective teachers, tell us that yes, we are on the right track. There are those that need more assistance, those that don't need more assistance, but that this system is one that allows each of us and all of us to continue improving in our practice. A lot of data. We have a whole technical advisory group. And hey, maybe that's where we could get bodies some point down the line. Just pointing that out. We had principals roundtable. We have, again, this technical advisory group. We have teacher leader work groups. We have direct feedback from the field. And then there are other entities that are also giving feedback as well, to try to look at what matters, what doesn't matter, what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, paying attention to all of what the world is telling us ought to be happening. And we believe that every year we try to hone it in just a little bit better. So when we come to discussions about where we've been in the last 3 years, we know that for most teachers, a full-blown process that everybody went through in that first year is unnecessary. And so we have some suggestions that we would like to put forth, which I believe are here. One of the key things that has been a major source of whatever is worse than heartburn, but not quite like a heart attack, has been the use of test scores in teacher evaluations. We believe that it needs to be moved out of its own section, partly because one of the things that has been a challenge is, if we're saying that this system is supposed to help us improve our practice, you giving me my scores of the kids I worked with last year about a third of the way into the year I have new kids is not a good opportunity for me to do anything with that for my practice. And we're not there yet. There's always going to be a lag, and that's a challenge. The other thing, and is as important as what we said about student feedback, for a teacher to improve their practice, it cannot serve as a, well, you missed that mark. And it isn't what we do to our students either. It's supposed to be a system, whether it's in the classroom or in my evaluation or in the school system. Where are we now? Where are we trying to be? what is keeping us from getting where we want to be? What is it we need to change so we can get where we want to be? What might we need? So it's much more in the process and the reflection than it ever is in an outcome, and that's where we think the SGP would be better served. So allowing it to be part of the reflective practice, again, core professionalism has been rising up over and over again as the place that I think ultimately is where all of you have always wanted us to be. What does it mean to be a professional educator? These are some of the practices and some of the elements that should be in it. We believe that student learning and growth should continue to be a part of our evaluation. And by we, I mean the joint committee, because that's what we're there for. We think the SLO process, having gone through all these different iterations, one of the things that we've heard over and over again is we do this similarly in the data team processes statewide. So what we're asking as a committee is to look more at having the SLO be simplified and really kind of more attached to the data team process, so that we're not asking people to do two exact same things, one for real and one for real. I mean, like for real in one way, but not in the other way, and then for real in the other way, but not in the other, make it all count, so that our work, the time we spend on this, is not replicated unnecessarily and does what we intend for it to do. The beauty of the data team process in helping us with our SLO is, particularly as it speaks to new teachers, it means nobody goes it alone. The SLO process on its face is an individual process. You can hold me accountable for my individual outcomes, but you know what? If I'm working with my team, that is an amazing thing in terms of collaboration, support, all of the things we want out of this system. And then again, we continue to maintain the multiple measures. The SLO process using data teams is multiple points of measure of student progress and outcomes. We think that there are a number of things that we can do to make sure that the rigor I think people want to make sure is in our profession can be addressed as you honor, and I think what was said earlier, maintain the respect of our profession and the time that it takes to do the work that we do. Right now, we're using Social Security numbers to determine, and we've attached it to the year of the graduating class. So next year's graduating class is 2017, so all odd numbers, Social Security numbers would be used to determine who goes on the more standard process. Was it in the slide? Because we didn't talk about the fairness of okay. For those of you that don't know, the full-blown evaluation that we ask our new teachers to go through until they're tenured, and we ask all of our marginal teachers to go through, requires two observations, the Danielson observations, which is a very complex, comprehensive evaluation, requiring a pre-observation conference, a whole lot of things set up ahead of time. It requires them to do 2 SLOs. It's a very complex process. In a perfect world, we find a way to make that fit better with the new teacher's life, because one of the major concerns being raised by our new teachers is this on top of what they're expected to do as their ongoing jobs is oppressive. So, but that's a separate thing, okay? So separate, just put it in your pocket for now, because what we're looking for is, in terms of the standard evaluation, what a teacher would do if they were tenured and had been previously marked as effective, would still include an observation. It just would not require that pre-conference. So that when a fire joke breaks out, when someone's supposed to come and observe my class, or a fight breaks out, or I don't know, a flash mob breaks out, I don't know, and my administrator can't come and visit me, it's not we do over. That's been the process. If we lined up a whole conference and a whole set of observation expectations, and something happens at the last minute, that teacher is required to do everything over again. And we're saying, look, for those that have already shown you that they're effective, just come see them another time. Schedule it, everybody knows, we're professionals, we understand what you're supposed to be looking for. You're a professional administrator, you know what you're looking for, and let's call it a day. Again, keeping the SLOs tied to the data teams. and really focusing most on those things that everybody expects, and that is our core professionalism. We believe that may be the way to take the evaluation and really differentiate for those that are in need of a lot of support and those that can really do more self-directed support. And then in the streamlined years, it's just a check-in. Because one of the things that we found over and over again was administrators and teachers actually like to know that once a year they were going to get a chance to talk to each other officially, on the record, and professionally. That is not something prior to EES that could have been guaranteed for any teacher.
So good afternoon, I'm Stacy Kunihisa, principal of Kamehameha Elementary School, and let me tell you, it is the end of the school year, and for me driving up from Waipio all the way here, I want you to know my presence, the only reason I am here is to speak volumes towards the collaboration and the meaningfulness of this joint committee. Other than that, you may not see me again, because I gotta run a school. The EES overall, to sum up in one word, the impact on all school administrators is just overwhelming. It was phenomenally challenging to fit everything in and to do the pre-post and following all the T's and dotting the I's. It was very difficult. So I felt really honored to be a part of this joint committee. I just want to speak again towards the professionalism, the collaboration, and the insight that you gain from coming together as a team. Can you go back to the other slide? And I just want to give you maybe one or two quick stories, and I'm done because I know you're busy as well. The student growth percentile definitely should be taken out because a lot of teachers stray away from teaching in those upper grade levels. Not only are they coaching basketball and volleyball, and they're just overwhelmed with what they're doing, the lower grades don't have that responsibility added onto them. They're doing the math Olympiad, they're doing the science competitions, and so they start to fear teaching those grade levels because it's a lot of pressure on them. In one class yesterday, a teacher came up to me, she does inclusion, and another teacher who does special education, kind of a resource. Both of them came up to me and says, Stacy, my scores were not as great as I thought, but 100% of the students showed incredible growth. So that is huge. And my response back to them is, let's look at their growth and let's commend you for that. And I'm not all about whether or not they met that proficiency level because they started here and they moved here. They missed it by 3 points, some of them. So I am strongly in favor of taking that out. I do not think it is a reflection of the teacher's work. I do think the growth is a huge measure of what is going on, and not only is it a teacher's responsibility, but it is the administrator's responsibility. The training for the SLOs, I just want to speak real quickly towards that. I think that's huge for administrators. We had to take a test for the Danielson, literally had to study for it and take a test, and people were trying to like, what did you write? Or we couldn't cheat. So, and we have to get recalibrated. So it is just incredible with the amount of training we got for Danielson, and that's the observation piece, and that's been the most successful part in my opinion. The SLO training was not as comprehensive, so I think number 4 is very important for administrators to include the training for SLOs and also teach colleagues and teach each other how to embed the data teams process within the umbrella of running that SLO and what that looks like and what tools to use for schools. So I am just here to support our team because it was awesome. It was an awesome experience. It did take us away from school, flying over. So it's just been a really wonderful ride together, and I think we have made significant improvements. So thank you to our State Department as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. It was very informative, and it's impressive that you've all come today to share your experiences and your ideas. Are there any questions? Mr. Mizunami?
Sorry I was late. Just so I can educate myself, to help facilitate the discussion because it's difficult to get different opinions together and make sure that people are focused or people are not taking things personally.
Facilitating it was more like herding. And the Castle Foundation graciously provided us Alex, I only ever know him as Alex.
Alex Harris.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, Alex Harris was our facilitator.
And Tammy of the first year, because she was with, yes. And we kind of would come in with our own agendas, and they would tell us, okay, we gotta do this, and still, it was a group thing that things changed and morphed, and I just want to say that the facilitators really helped us get to that point where we had something at the end of the day.
In addition, we started every meeting off with group norms, as you've seen earlier, but we also reflected on our progress made so far. So there was a lot of debrief and reflection, and it was a recursive process. So it wasn't, here's a new thing on our agenda, but let's go back and what are our agreements? So it was a very difficult situation at some points because there were some lines drawn. Some people walking out of rooms, but somehow we came back together and walked out feeling okay with the decisions made.
My second question, how would you keep this sustainable? Because I'm going to guess that people change out of the committees over time, but you want to make sure that the trust is preserved within the group.
And I think, and I meant to share earlier, one of the things that everyone has been speaking about is the new reauthorized ESEA, right, ESSA. And actually, in that respect, I think the state of Hawaii is ahead of everybody else in that this is actually, this type of collaboration is an expectation as states take a look at their own approaches to dealing with the guidelines of ESSA or the expectations of ESSA. And so as the person that came on in the second year, because I wasn't there, I wasn't on the first team, I came on in the second team, I think a lot of it has to do with ensuring that the intention of the entity are in line with the bigger picture. And so whether we changed out, whether or not, because right now this joint committee is members of the superintendent's office, a representative of the complex area superintendents, a representative of the school principals, and then people from HSTA. And in this case, one elementary non-classroom teacher, one secondary non-classroom teacher, and in my case, a secondary classroom teacher. So this is really a very small group of what's possible. Right? There were no parents on there were no students on there was no one representing the board on there unless it's, the department, so it's really about speaking to the higher calling. What is that higher calling? And it is to provide the best education system that is possible in this state. And if everybody keeps their eyes towards that prize, then as long as the people coming to the table have their eyes in that same general location, it's possible to bring people up to speed. And it really is about having the conversation about the conversations that were had when they weren't in the room so they can understand how things came to pass.
It certainly sounds like you guys have come a long way.
I just make one observation. This is the list of current members on the joint committees. Only half of them are original members. As people have changed positions, they've moved. So this picture on the bottom, this is from a meeting where you see Ron Nazoy, Suzette Mulcahy, as members of the joint committee, but since they've moved to different positions, they've swapped people out. So to the point about, the purpose was so strong, and so new people were able to come in and participate without going backwards.
Mr. Horner?
Broke everything. Hey, first I want to thank you for the hard work. Are you testifying today that there is consensus between at least I'm not sure who you represent. I know, Tammy, you represent administration. I know you quote represent the principals as best you can, quote HSTA, etc. First off, the group itself has a consensus on these recommendations? Is that?
Yes.
I don't really need to get into the math, but is that a unanimous consensus? Or was that a 5-4 vote? Or
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Terrific. Last question. Are you serving as a representative of your constituency? In other words, can the board take from this recommendation that this is coming also from your representative of what you represent?
The union testified in favor.
Yeah, I was gonna say, given the written testimony that was received from
I
HSTA,
saw that this morning, yes.
yes.
But there's also a principals forum, for example, that I also would like to hear from.
So the principal's roundtable is a little bit different, but I believe in all of my constituents that I talk to, I'm not a big part of the union, but I do have a.
But you're gonna be bust up, you know that.
Okay,
You're
let me tell you this.
256 brothers and sisters in the afternoon.
Each year that we make improvements, I only get positive feedback. I don't get any negative feedback from anyone except, again, it's hard, we need this, but I present annually at a sizzle, so I just have a lot of different connections with different people as well as a Pearl City.
In your professional judgment of being a principal, you think the principals would be supportive of this direction?
Stacy.
Stace?
Absolutely, definitely, yes. To remove the SGP causes a lot of angst for all ranks.
And then when we go through the teachers, obviously there's elementary versus middle versus high school. And so I know you can represent all. Joe, you.
So every year that we've made changes, what we've done is really try to differentiate who needs more support, who can do more on their own. And we think that this latest iteration tries to put into the evaluation, or rather pare the evaluation down to those practices that are a natural part of what we're already doing. We all are doing data teams. We all prepare for our classes, so if it was about somebody coming in for a planned observation, that shouldn't be shocking. We all are expected to be professionals at the core. This idea of reflecting on student feedback and reflecting on student outcomes on these standardized tests, if that's what we're going to be using, that's still my reflection, and it's still part of my practice as a teacher. So we believe that the teachers will see this as being more in line with their practice and not on top of what they do. I will be very candid with you. You know, I mean, it's not a shocker to any of you that teachers would like any reference to a standardized test removed from the evaluation, right? I mean, so as that has not been the case, even in this recommendation, they probably still not gonna like that too much. Okay, so,
This is a significant improvement on where they are now.
and certainly that it's not a direct correlation between my evaluation score and how my students performed on a standardized test. They will like this iteration if a test has to be included much better than.
And it reflects the fact that we're listening.
Correct.
Thank you.
You know, we have one action item which is tied to this presentation. It's 4 o'clock now, so, and there's a presentation associated with the action item. So with that, I'll call on Mr. Min, and who else want, and Amy, and then Patricia, you want? Okay, Maggie, and Mr. Williams, you will have the last word. So, so let's go one round and then we're done. And then you guys gotta talk.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you folks. And I think when they said who you represent the students. I mean, that's the bottom line. And the fact that you can take off your jerseys and get together and reflect on what the students need, and all you need to do is fascinating. It's chicken skin. I almost want to sing Kumbaya with you. But realistically, I'm glad we're moving the evaluations from being perceived as a sickness type evaluation or something's wrong with you to a more real purpose where it's going to help student achievement and make you a better teacher. So I really commend you, and I'm glad that the department is beginning to show this type of collaboration, and I'm hoping that as we move forward, we'll get more of this. And again, as I told Amy, don't forget to come back and ask.
Amy.
I'll make it quick, I promise, Brian. But I was asking my oldest son, who's 17 years old and a junior at University Lab School, asked him, I have my youngest son was from Inaheim in the Emu Valley, and my daughter who's in private school and switching private schools. And I asked, what is most important for you? You're 17, you're going to graduate next year, and out of your whole, experience at school, what has been like the factor that you want me as a parent most to consider? What's most important in your day-to-day life in school? Is it your friends that you see there? Like, is it the atmosphere at the school? He said, I didn't even bring this up. He just said, my teachers. My teachers are the most important thing in my school. And so, that kind of like made me think, wow, my kid actually cares about his teachers right back at them. And I know how much they cared about him because I've witnessed it. But on that note, I just want to, say that your emphasis on core professionalism, that is it, right? To be treated as professionals and to improve your craft. I love that. So I want to understand number 3. Better align student learning objective process with school's data team process and simplify SLO documentation. So does that mean, just tell me if I'm just totally wrong here. You're a teacher and one of the things like you're struggling with is, I don't know, some part of classroom management or something like that. But your school data team is looking at reading comprehension and really, focusing on reading comprehension across the 5th grade or something like that. So how does that, what do you mean align? Because in some ways it makes me think like, maybe then it doesn't align with what that teacher or their core professionalism enhancement really needs. It's just focused back to the bigger, broader picture of the school.
So very quickly, an SLO is a year-long or a semester-long goal, so it is a bigger umbrella. Data teams is about a 1 to 2 week process. So the way we do it at our school is if it's a writing goal, the child needs to be able to write 5-paragraph essay, details, whatnot, for the entire year. You set your goal, but during the data teams process throughout the year, you're looking at just the introduction, you're looking at just writing details, you're looking at, so it's almost small little checkpoints along the way to get your end goal of improving writing overall. So typically with SLOs, you begin with a standard, and it has to be a meaty standard, not just multiplication and division. It needs to be able to, speak towards something larger and more global, and the data teams process is more finite and very measurable quantitatively, so you're able to identify the strategies, move your class forward, and move continuously until you get your end result, which should be the SLO, and that's the time together. Does that help? So you wouldn't choose classroom management and reading strategies.
Right, but I'm just saying
But you're saying
that
if that's what somebody wanted to work on.
if that's what someone needed to work on, does the data team process still accommodate it if it's sort of outside of the bigger, broader picture?
So the fact that it's a team, the fact that it's a team working on it, it should be the place where even if we're doing reading strategies as our data team work, if I can't get my students to manage themselves, there's not any reading strategy that's going to work. So that's a conversation that the team needs to have. So as Stacy said, sometimes it's the smaller bites along the way that help you get to the longer end run. There may be expectations that some of the reading strategies that might be used are less about the reading as it is about where you read, how you read, who you read with. That also attaches to the management, the classroom management, the child behavior, the child self-management that can be worked into the data teams. But what we believe is the beauty behind that is that my SLO will actually come from me having a rich discussion with my colleagues. So if it's a grade level thing, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one that's got scored on that 3rd grader.
Yeah.
So on the issue of, for just the description, a more in-depth description of the teacher evaluation system and its components might be better at a different time to give everybody a briefing on the overall, just to get more into.
Okay, Patricia?
Thank you. I have a question about number 1. So the student growth percentile, which I agree delinking the proficiency to the teacher evaluation is really important, but it is important to see the growth of your students and to reflect on that in your core professionalism. So how Like, what other measures do schools use to assess growth, like with any kind of formative assessments that can teachers bring into their core professionalism that might be separate from SBAC, which we'll get information a little bit later from. But I really am interested in how teachers can incorporate the formative assessment in their core professionalism.
So if it's okay, Patricia, if we can come back maybe at the June HR meeting and do a broader briefing on the details of how the evaluation works. That, just for time, I think that might be good because it's more of a question about how does this process work. So, and I think it'll take more than time than the chair would like us to spend right now to answer that question.
We'll put it on the agenda.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Just two more things.
Yeah.
So with the, no, this is so important because.
We'll put it on the agenda.
No, I love the fact that you are bringing together the data teams with the SLOs because I think for teachers to grow and develop, the collaborative piece is so key. And so when you talk about the data teams, are you talking about the special education support system and all the different people that support that one student? And so it's trying to work together for that one particular, for not just that teacher, but that whole class. So just wanted to stress, I do like that. And the last thing is the student evaluation, the tripod system. So in talking to some teachers, the tripod is that normally only given once, like at the beginning? Okay, so one of the concerns is it's only once. And so one of the concerns is that if there's kind of effectiveness over time, you would want to see if there's been any kind of change with like the relationships that have been built over time. And so one of the suggestions was that doing a post in some sense with the tripod survey, just so that there is, to see if that there's been any growth in how teachers have related and served the students.
We can definitely revisit that and have that conversation. I'm not sure what teacher you spoke to. That does not seem to be like many of the teachers that spoke to us very loudly and emphatically. But the concept is exactly right. The idea that we're looking at things reflectively and over time. But in the case of using the tripod, we have it because that's the thing that was available at the time that we first started. We already can't use it for our lower grades. It's not developmentally appropriate for them. We are trying to see if there's a better type of evaluation that would allow for exactly what you're describing, that doesn't seem to be so oppressive for so many people. So right now, we say yes in theory, and we'll work on it.
Okay, Ms. Cox?
People at school level have so much work to do that I'm pleased to hear about trying to work a little smarter instead of not adding more work. So when you tie things together, it makes a lot of sense. And it's no surprise to anybody on a campus who are really good teachers and who are not so good. People know that. So I like the idea that you don't have to go through the heavy process every year with everybody, because I don't know how you principals did it anyway, because no sooner than you schedule something, a parent walks in unhappy about something or whatever, and it's all canceled. So I think it's great that you're working in that direction. I guess my only thing that I've not been happy about in this whole evaluation thing, and I'm just going to throw it out there, I used to tell my kids, so what if your teacher's not so good this year? You'll get a better one next year and you'll be fine. Actually, research says if you don't have a good teacher once, you're really going to affect the learning all the way through. And so I've never liked when the evaluation says unsatisfactory on something and whatever else on the other, and it's effective. To me, if you got an unsatisfactory on anything, it's the least you can have is marginal. So I just needed to say that because I grumbled at Mr. Schatz already about that, because I know that it's not that I'm trying to be mean, but I know that I want good teachers for every kid in the school. So I know that when if you just say, I was unsatisfactory and I was whatever and I'm effective, it doesn't have the same of you better get to work and make it better and provide more in service and more help and so forth. So with your groups working together, and I firmly believe in interdisciplinary and I believe in collaboration and all of those kind of things. So I think you're all on the right track. But you need to think real hard about what you're going to do if somebody is unsatisfactory on anything, because that person needs a lot of extra help because they're affecting kids every single day. Okay, I'm off my soapbox now, but thank you all for your time and energy, because I know it's hard to being pulled out of school. And your kids miss you when you're gone.
Mr. Williams?
Thank you. Just one specific question. I don't understand number 6. And I want the person to respond to do it in 30 seconds, not 300 seconds.
Oh, wait, now let me
That's
challenge
not
you.
you.
Let me know. You don't know that? Let me know. Okay. It's the one that you asked for. Okay, start your top. Start your top. This is a human process. The components of it are human. Everybody involved, it's humans. And so trying to keep it with a mathematical format has not proven to be successful. But we do think that there needs to be the exact thing that Ms. Cox has referred to. What does it mean when someone is unsat in anything? What do we do to trigger further looks at it, or a cut line, and that's for further discussion. I know that was 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. That was very good. What I really wanted to say or get at is, you know, Don and I and Tammy, Joan, Diane, and the superintendent, we're all in the room when we agreed to this. And there were some linkages people forget about. I mean, it may seem silly, we want everybody to be paid more, but this was linked to the pay raise, the administration, not because of us. The administration said, we gotta get more bang for our buck. We're gonna add on to the pay raise, then what's the public gonna get for it? And that was a commitment. So the answer from both jointly, union and DOE and BOE, was what you're gonna get is, we're gonna assure that DOE is doing everything possible to help the teachers succeed, and that we're identifying any problem areas. So that was kind of a commitment made. And then another aspect of it was that HSTA, the HSTA representatives, bargaining team, didn't necessarily buy into what we were selling. Weren't sure it was right or it would work on the one hand, but then, and especially Kathy, the superintendent, said, look, this is going to be an iterative process. And we're going to have a joint committee, and we're committed to making the joint committee work. And that was part of the process for acceptance by the union. And then, but it, you know, was that going to be just words, or was it going to be real? And I think what we see 3 years later is that it's real. Now, I also have to say, I was very disappointed a number of meetings back when the president of I asked the president of HSTA about a survey that the committee did, and frankly, he dismissed it. And I was very fearful that that was the end of the joint committee. So I'm very glad that it's not, and that HSTA, not only your members here on the joint committee, but also in testimony, is supporting the policy change. A number of members that looked at me and said, you support this change, because they know that I was the author and the impetus behind the original policy. But the process is working. I don't think what's been presented today is perfect. It doesn't. And by the way, I think just listening to testimony, it's oversold. I mean, if there's gonna be multiple measurements, think about what the possibilities are. You can't get rid of all of these things, you won't have multiple measurements. One of the weaknesses of an earlier decision was made, was you guys wanted only one SLO, but that reduces the number of measurements. And then you have teachers saying, well, it's high stakes. Well, you asked for it to be high stakes, but you didn't know that's what you were asking. So, you know, we shouldn't oversell the changes that are being made now. There are gonna be improvements, but it's not gonna result in a perfect system. But it's far better to make adjustments, to be flexible, than to just come and say, no. The public isn't gonna buy teachers saying, well, just leave it to us. We know what we're doing. We don't need evaluations. They're not gonna buy that. They're also not gonna buy that doesn't matter how the students perform. I always shared with Don that one of my mentors said, you know, I taught my dog how to talk. And everybody said, what? How'd you do that? That was, you know, you should go on the circuit, you can make a lot of money. He said, well, I taught him how to talk, but he didn't learn. So, I mean, we can't have that system. So, thank you for the work you do. I just wanted to give some historical perspective because that's very important. And the superintendent should get a lot of credit for sticking to her word and putting all of this, you know, together. She doesn't, you know, she's not counting on people, but she's there making sure that we live up to her word. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming. That was a great presentation. And again, the hard work that you folks are doing each and every day, not only in your own schools, but in terms of the collaboration to help student achievement in all of our schools. You know, I'm a product of our public schools. I went from kindergarten to high school, graduated from Beam High School, same school that the superintendent, and I never had a bad teacher. Never had it until I went to law school. But I only had one bad teacher in law school. So I know that we have great teachers, and the last time the statistics came out, you know, they were highly effective teachers, a large percentage, and I think that's the experience of our families throughout the state, is that we have great teachers. And this process is to assist and improve, and what you guys spoke to today really speaks volumes about the hard work that you folks do and the professionalism of everybody involved. So thank you for coming. So let's move on to Tammy's next presentation. I don't think you really need to make the presentation.
Just pitch it, just pitch it.
Not really, I just want to see if we
We got the memo.
we got the memo, we read it. You can turn off the
You
thing.
should just know what the changes are.
Yeah, why don't you, well, first of all, let's entertain a motion to approve the proposed change.
I'll move, Chair.
Move the second, okay, Tammy, why don't you highlight the changes? Thank you very much. Are you guys ready for a vote? Go ahead, Tim.
So we are.
That was an excellent memo that you provided us, and that's why we don't have many questions. So go ahead.
Mark Craig provided the memo and I did the PowerPoint. So just to let you know, first, what we are intending in terms of implementation, but that implementation is contingent upon this change of board policy that we are requesting, and also some collective bargaining issues. So what we are doing in terms of, let me start by just saying the summary of the revisions that we're proposing. Removing test scores as a required measure of student learning and growth. Second, to provide additional flexibility in the weighting of the student learning and growth and teacher practice components of the evaluation. So the current board policy requires that 50% be student learning and growth and 50% be teacher practice. We're looking for a little bit of flexibility for the future because we want this policy to be flexible. And so we're asking for at least 40% for each component so that we can have some flexibility as we move forward. And then there's some minor edits for clarity and consistency. So those are the changes in the policy that we are recommending. In terms of what the implications would be for 2016-17, which are under discussion and still require the discussion with the unions and such. The most significant change is maintaining student learning and growth as a significant component of the evaluation, but removing the student growth percentile based on the student test scores as a required weighted measure. Okay, and one of the key reasons is that the board policy requires that the components and the feedback and the data and the evaluation be timely, and the way that, they're based on test scores, the tests happen at the end of the year, teachers don't get their SGP until the next school year, so there's a lag in terms of when that data is available. So we're for now taking student growth percentiles out, but still maintaining the reflection on the growth percentiles as part of our professional as discussed, and then some simplification of processes, and then establishing a process, I think, to remember Cox's point, establishing a process that data gets further reviewed, or there's a different business rule for what happens when the teacher is scoring at the lowest category on the teacher practice component. So that's implementation-wise what would be pending for next school year if the board approved the policy recommendation.
Any questions? Mr. Horner?
So I made the motion, so I'm very supportive, but just a couple of clarifications. Steve, are we in this policy still being compliance with state law? I recall there's a small caveat somewhere, back when Reagan stated, it has to be something tied to performance.
We have an expectation that there's an annual rating of performance, which is included, and also that performance-based, that be based on, I think there's a little phrase, that efficiency.
Just yes or no is good enough, I trust you.
Yes, it's consistent with state law.
Second. And Fed, you feel with the new waiver and the task force we got going on this year, we can sell this?
So the federal requirements so we established EES.
Yes or no is good.
Sorry, it's say this, ESSA, which is going forward, does not have, is silent on the issue of what's a part of teacher evaluation, so there's no requirement that test scores be included.
But when it's silent, doesn't mean it took away from what the rules were before.
It's state choice. So it's our board policy and our collective bargaining agreement, which currently put in place the requirement.
And this is my own education. I've read this policy, and I think it's implicit, but when I do an evaluation, to me, part of it is to say thank you to the employee. And I'm fine with the policy, I'm not asking, but I think the paragraph says the evaluation system must provide timely feedback to identify the needs of the educator, which I assume is the teacher, and guide their professional development. I just hope when we implement, part of that process is just a sense of appreciation. We don't pay our teachers that much. So I think part of the evaluation is the validation. Sometimes we just get so hung up on the metrics, we stop and don't say, as the boss talking to the subordinate, thank you for your service, thank you for the work that you do, and we appreciate, you know what I'm saying? So I hope that sentence that reads, in that paragraph that says evaluations must provide timely feedback, part of that feedback is a sense of appreciation. That's the only observation I'll make in the implementation. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Salgado? Any other questions? Ms. Cox?
I'm good.
Okay, are you ready for the question? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carried. Thank you very much. Now we come to the agenda where we have adjournment. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. We move the second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carried. Our general business meeting starts in half an hour.
Well done, Mr. Luma.
Good job.
Good job.